Alright, how's everyone doing? Let me get Facebook started here. Alright, so we're live now on Facebook and YouTube. Alright, I'll wait a little bit and see if anybody shows up. Then we'll get going. So, this is your first time watching me. I am on Facebook and YouTube. So if you're watching me on YouTube, definitely like the page, share it out. I got a lot of interesting videos and archive of videos that talk about spirituality and things that are going on in the world, and just, you know, the basic foundations that we need to start looking at for the future of this world. This world is definitely going on a very interesting path. So that's kind of what I present in my videos. You can also check me out at facebook.com/realtalkadam Starseed Bey. That's my main page right now, so if you need to get a hold of me, that's the page to go to. Definitely like the page, share it out, and all that good stuff. So yeah. So yeah, today we're going to be talking about some interesting stuff. Basically, some of the hidden meanings behind the blood of Christ, or by His stripes we are healed. By His stripes we are healed. And look at it in a deeper meaning, right? You know, everything is, we've been so conditioned about what Christ sacrificed Himself for, right? You know, we focus so much on the physical aspect of His being that we overlook the beauty and the representation of what the soul is, what the spirit is. The reason why Christ was here in the first place was to what? Bring us closer to the Most High on a personal level. And Christ used Himself as a tool and a guide to help humanity learn how to obtain the I am presence, right? You know, the I am presence. I am that I am, right? The name of Yahweh, right? The Almighty. You know, there's so many different things. I got my daughter showing off in the back. But there's just so many things that we have to look at from a physical standpoint and a spiritual standpoint. The spiritual element of what Christ brought to the table is lost. You know, it's not taught in the churches. It's misled, right? You know, because you talk about meditation, things of that nature. You think it's paganism, right? You know, and that's something I want to talk about as well, as paganism, right? We have to really kind of distinguish what it's talking about in the Bible in those ways, right? Because I mean, Christ did a lot of things. Christ did a lot of things. You know, He walked on water. He performed miracles. He cast demons out of people. He healed people. He brought people back from the dead. That's magic. That is magic. And we have to learn it's not just the definition of magic, but it's the realization of that spiritual energy that we all are capable of doing, right? You know, Christ was never meant to be on a pedestal. And you know, you read through Matthew, Mark, Luke, John, you know, the life of Christ. You know, He never put Himself on a pedestal. He always was very clear that He was here for the Most High. He was a representation of the Most High, and He was here to bring us closer on a personal level with the Most High. That was His goal. That's what He accomplished. But we, not really we, but the churches or people thousands and thousands of years ago lost that meaning, and somebody created Christ as an idol to be worshipped, an idol to be put on a pedestal. And that was never the intention at all. It was the story behind it and what was represented to the world. So we're going to kind of explore that through the scriptures here. And hopefully this will give you a better understanding. But I mean, at the end of the day, that's what these videos are for. you know, is to testify to what we discover in the Spirit, listen to the Spirit, spend time in meditation and prayer about what Christ is wanting you to talk about, what kind of testimony or prophecy, right, prophetic word is needing to be presented out here. You know, we really have to look at this stuff, and maturity is key at the end of the day. You know, I've been talking a lot about maturity in the Spirit, and we all have to come to that conclusion. You know, we have to stop bickering at who has the right God doctrine, who has the wrong God doctrine, who has the right church and the wrong church, and things of that nature. You know, we have to realize, you know, that what the representation of the good news is, right? And we have to also recognize who the gossipers are. That's a huge thing, gossipers, and that's something I want to talk about maybe in the next video. I might talk about in the next video. Gossiping is huge in the churches, and we really need to look at what gossiping is all about. So I'll get totally off track if I talk about it anymore. So yeah. So let me go ahead and read this here, and then we'll start reading some chapters about the blood of Christ and things of that nature, and we'll see where the Spirit leads us. You know, that's the thing I love about doing live videos, or videos itself, is that when you fully submerge yourself with the Spirit of Christ and allow the Spirit to bring forth what needs to be presented, it turns into something different. You know, it speaks to those whoever tunes in. You know, how's it going, Brandon? Whoever turns in, you know. So yeah. So anyways, let me go ahead and read this here, and we'll go from there. So this is, oh no, open it, exit out. It probably did. Hold on here. I got two computers going on here, so give me a second here. It wouldn't be the first time I accidentally exited out, and I did. Oh, I hate it when that happens. Alright, so now I gotta go to history and get the information I had just exited out of. So give me just a second here, guys. Alright. Okay, I got it back open. Thank goodness for history. Alright, so we're reading Isaiah 53, chapter 1. Basically, we'll just read through and see what it says here. So basically it says, "Who has believed our report, and to whom is the arm of the Almighty revealed? For he shall grow up before him as a tender plant, and as a root of a dry ground." As a root of a dry ground. And this is what I always tell people, is that we have to start from the root, which is our feet, and we have to look at the hidden symbolisms within what? Nature. Nature is a beautiful aspect and element of the spiritual realm, right? So when we plant our feet into the ground, we are connecting back to nature, back to the Mother Earth, and we become life again. You know, it's so important to put your feet in the ground. "And as a root of a dry ground, he hath no form, no comeliness. And when we shall see him, there is no beauty that we should desire him." There is no beauty that we should desire him. And this was an interesting one when I was reading it, because it's interesting. "For he shall grow up before him as a tender plant, and as a root out of a dry ground. He has no form nor comeliness, and when we shall see him, there is no beauty that we should desire him." And I think that really kind of is a representation of, like what I was just saying earlier, you know, is that we should not be idolizing Christ, because Christ was never meant to be an idol, but we're supposed to look at the message of what Christ presented to the world. He is despised and rejected of humanity, a human of sorrow and acquainted with grief. Sorry, I hate big words, man. I was trying to write these big words down in a simpler way. That's okay. And we hid, as it were, our faces from him. He was despised, and we esteemed him not. He was despised, and we esteemed him not. You know, we didn't question why he was being tortured and ridiculed. You know, and the very thing we have to realize through this is that Christ was hated among the churches as well. You know, people don't realize this, you know, that, you know, it's great to talk about Christ and his perceived coming back, but if Christ came back, he would be hated. He'd be ridiculed. You tell a Christian that, you tell anybody who's in the church that, they'll be like, oh no, you know, we'd automatically know that it was Christ and we would follow and worship him. No, you wouldn't. You would hate him because Christ did not like the church and how the church represented the Almighty. He hated the church, and that's exactly what he would do. He would do the same thing again. He would be turning tables and things of that nature as well. David is saying, is that the eye of the tiger I see back there? Could be. Yeah, this is just my blanket here. It's kind of a trademark of mine. Anyways, so we have to realize that too, is that Christ would be ridiculed again. And that's what we're going through right now, is that very same element. We're learning about Christ's teachings. We're learning about Christ's practices. And the confusing state is happening every single day. Every single day. So, you know, we really have to check ourselves. You know, like I said, Christ was not an idol, and we have to realize that what Christ was trying to tell us is that we need to learn to better ourselves and create that personal relationship with God within, that I am, you know, and that's what we're looking at. So then we can go out into the world and present that good news. Not be a gossiper, not be yelling our lungs out on some street corner, because again in the Bible it says, you know, that we should not be preaching on the street corners, right? You know, we're here to spread the good news, but we shouldn't have to force it down people's throats, because that becomes a gossiper. Definitely controversial in that element, but maturity is key in everything that we do. For those who hear and see the Spirit will be led and guided. They don't need to be preached and yelled at to be brought into the kingdom of heaven, to be brought into the anointing of the Spirit, which is Christ. So, beautiful stuff. Beautiful stuff. So anyways, let's see what else we got here. Surely he has bore our griefs and carried our sorrows, yet we did esteem him stricken, smitten of the Most High, and afflicted. But he was wounded for our transgressions. He was bruised. Excuse me, I can't talk today. He was bruised. Holy cow, I can't say that word. For our immorality, for our wickedness, for our gross behavior, for our lawlessness state of being, because we lost that spiritual connection. We lost it, you know. It was all about the physical expression, you know, the worshiping outside self, you know, sacrificing animals and lust and sexual desires and things of that nature. The lust of the flesh, and the spirit was lost. And that's what we're seeing now. You know, we're seeing the very same elements of what was happening back then today, because of a lack of spiritual awareness and a lack of knowledge and wisdom of the Spirit, because we were never taught on how to commune within the Spirit. And that's real talk right there. So yeah, let's see here. But he was wounded. Oh yeah, we already read that. But we'll read again. But he was wounded for our transgressions, he was bruised for our wickedness, our immorality, our lawlessness. And let's see, the punishment for our wrongdoings and severe criticisms of our peace was upon him. And with his stripes we are healed. With his stripes we are healed. And I want to clarify what that means, by his stripes. That means that that each lash, right? That's what I was raised in the churches by, is that he was lashed by the whip, right? When he was bleeding and taking on the pain of our lawless state of being, right? Our lack of knowledge of the Spirit. He was abused, he was beaten down, and he sacrificed himself in that way because he questions things. He questioned things. He wasn't scared to speak out against the doctrine that they had, right? Because you have to realize, when Christ was walking the earth, there wasn't a Bible back then. There wasn't a Bible back then because it was being written, right? The Bible is a big diary. It is a big diary of a story, a hero's journey that is being presented in there. And that's what we have to look at in terms of the Bible. There wasn't a Bible back then. There was a lot of human doctrine that portrayed on how to worship the many gods that were being presented at that time, and currently at this time as well. It's a mess, basically. But that's what Christ was showed. Christ went out with a bang, basically. Christ went out with a bang, is that when you question things and you think outside the box, you're going to be observed. You're going to be looked at as like an alien or an ET. You're going to be looked at as not a human being, but like, why, just like with the Matrix, why is Adam stick out so much when you have all of these zombie monkeys flocking all over the place, looking at their phones and just, seeing the latest gossips of people. Oh, why is this person doing this? Why is this person doing that? Oh, look at this picture of this. Oh my gosh, I can't believe they just posted that picture of that person. That's what I call the monkey people, the zombie people, because they're not paying attention to their surroundings. They are lawless because they lack spiritual awareness. And spirituality is not a religion. It is our way of life. It is our true way of life. I always say that life is more spiritual than is physical, because that's what we are. This is just a suit that holds the spirit, the soul within. And it's so very important to learn about that. And you have to go inside yourself to discover that element. Again, I'm friends with atheists, so they really try to look at things logically, but even science has proven that there is a soul, there is energy, there's spirits, there's elementals and things of that nature as well. So it's quite fascinating, really is. So anyways, let's continue on here. Let's see. All we like sheep have gone astray, which is what I was just talking about. The monkeys or sheep have gone astray. We have turned every one to his own way, and the Almighty has laid on him the iniquity of us all, the wickedness or the lawlessness of us all. Christ put that all on his back, right? He was oppressed and he was afflicted, yet he opened not his mouth. He brought out as a lamb to the slaughter, and as a sheep before her shears is dumb, so he opened not his mouth. And basically, again, you don't want to have to speak up for the truth, right? I mean, you should be talking about it, but in a mature nature. Maturity is key in everything. And if you are mature and talking about this stuff, you're going to be respected. You're going to be honored. I see so many people, so many Christians or whatever kind of religion there is, speak out above the crowds, trying to spread the good news, but it is a loss of energy because it lacks the knowledge and wisdom of the Spirit. The knowledge and wisdom of the Spirit. We want people to be born again, but to be born again is to reclaim your spiritual essence again, to be anointed again in the Spirit, right? Christ Christos translates into the anointing one. So being anointed within the Spirit is so very important, and we have to experience that. It's not just words alone, right? The power of words are powerful, but it's not just saying it by words, but it's living by it. It's breathing it. It's praying. It's meditation. Going into that sacred place. That sacred place is symbolic for the wilderness that's talked about in the Bible. It's symbolic for going up on a hill or a high mountain. It's symbolic of going into that sacred place to talk and have a conversation with the Most High, or talk or have a conversation with Christ within. It's huge. It's huge, and it's very basic and simple, but again, a lack of knowledge because no one teaches us this stuff. And this is why a lot of people say that the New Age people have stolen Christ stuff, but at the end of the day, it's not. We should be thankful for what these people have brought out, right? They have brought out different variations of what meditation is. They have brought out different ways of communicating in the Spirit, looking at the Spirit in different ways. Everything is a piece of the puzzle, and we have to put those pieces of the puzzle together. So while the churches or Christians or whatever kind of religion may be trying to bash the New Agers, saying that they're worshiping paganism, at the end of the day, they're really doing what Christ was doing with his practices and his teachings, and we have to decipher it. Yes, we have to use discernment is definitely key, and that's where you have to listen to the Spirit of what is the Spirit wanting you to learn. Is the Spirit wanting you to learn more about meditation? Does the Spirit want to help you learn more about communicating with the spirits in the ethers, right? Does the Spirit want you to learn more about the ethers? Does the Spirit want you to focus more on the physical element of being saying prophetic words or praying over others, or there's other things, music, the power of music, the power of words, or the power of writing. There's so many different elements that the Spirit will bring out to you, will bring out the gifts that you are designed to bring out into this world as well. This is getting deep. I'm kind of getting lost where we're going with this. But that's what I was saying with when you allow the Spirit to flow through you, it presents itself. It presents itself out there, and it's very beautiful. Again, that's what happens when you are becoming one spiritually. You allow the chemical computer of your mind and the programs that were born into this reality. You shed those away, and you begin to go back into the Spirit, go back to what we were before we were in this body, right? The soul is eternal. The soul is eternal. This flesh may age. This flesh, is just like a vehicle. It can be healthy. It may need maintenance, right? But this is just a vehicle. Our soul continues on. Again, the churches teaches us differently. And they teach us wrong, too, because, just like the word hell, it does not exist in the Bible. Who created the word hell? Look it up. It's going to be towards the King James Version, the Vatican. they created those terms. They're different terminologies. You know, the basic translation was the underworld. And the interesting fact is that the underworld is the earth. The underworld's the earth, because we have to look at what was talked about in Genesis, talking about the creation of the firmament and the creation of the world itself as well. So the underworld is the earth, because our soul descended down into the flesh. So this should be the underworld, right? The underworld. And this goes into a whole other element. Again, I could be talking about a whole different subject here. So, yeah. So anyways, let's keep reading here. He was taken from prison and from judgment, and who shall declare his generation? Again, he was taken from prison and from judgment, and who shall declare his generation? Who shall declare his generation? Who is going to claim his generation? Who's going to claim his heritage? Who's going to man, I'm getting goosebumps with this. Who is going to be the successor of continuing the good news of what Christ brought to this world, continuing the generation and the traditions that Christ brought? That's a very important tool right there. For he was cut off out of the land of the living. For the transgressions of my people was he stricken. Right? Again, Christ was hated and ridiculed. People who were open-minded loved him. But because the people who had their own human doctrines hated and despised him. Again, he was accused of being a follower of Baal. That's in the Bible as well. So you really have to look at it as when the real teachings come out about Christ, which is what we're seeing, the churches are going to hate you for it, right? Human doctrine is huge. Human doctrine is huge, and I can't stress that enough, right? Again, when you read the Bible, it was never meant to be a religion. It was meant to be a diary to help us along our spiritual path in this physical reality, and to help us get back to our spiritual essence, because we're born into programs, and if these programs don't teach us about spirituality in the right way when we're young, then we're going to get lost into this land of confusion, this land of physical, materialistic realm of existence. Holy moly. All right, so let's continue on here. And he made his grave with the wicked, and with the rich in his death, because he had done no violence, neither was any deceit within his mouth. Christ didn't fall for any of that. Christ went out, the story of Christ walking with Satan, right? Christ was like, Satan, stay behind me, right? Satan continuously tried to give Christ the easy way out. Hey, forfeit your soul. Forfeit your soul. You don't need your soul no more. I can give you all the riches of the land. You can be the most powerful human in this physical reality. Who needs your soul? Who needs a soul? Who needs to talk and commune with the Almighty? And that's basically what Satan was getting at, the adversary of your life. And that's what Satan translates to, is the adversary. And we all have adversaries within our lives. We always do. Is to keep us away spiritually. That's what we call and label distractions. Distracting us away from our spiritual potentials. That's something I want to be growing upon as I continue with these videos. Is spiritual progression is huge, and it's something that's not being taught at this time. Sprinkled on there, it's sprinkled there, but it's not being fully taught. So that's definitely something we have to look into more. So yeah. Yet he pleased the Most High to bruise him. He had put him to grief when thou shalt make his soul an offering. When thou shalt make his soul an offering for sin. He shall see his seed, he shall prolong his days, and the pleasure of the Most High shall prosper in his hand. And this is powerful. And the pleasure of the Almighty shall prosper in his hand, in Christ's hand. I mean, literally, like I said, Christ was a symbolism of going back to the Spirit, going back and talking with the Almighty within. His teachings have already been laid. The foundation was there. His disciples wrote down in journals and books to document what he went through or what it takes to get back into the Spirit, and the miracles that we can show the world, and this brings into Reiki healing. This is a huge thing. Again, this is a New Age concept, but this was ancient teachings, is Reiki healing. And the amazing thing now is that Reiki healing is being used now in independent hospitals, doctors, right? They're not in the public hospitals yet, but they're in independent hospitals and things of that nature. Reiki healing is spiritual healing, which is also, again, how Christ healed people as well. It's huge stuff, and we have to realize that it's not that we're taking stuff back, it's that we're bringing the teachings back to humanity in the right way. So that's a key thing right there. He shall see of the travail of his soul, I bet you I probably said that word wrong, and shall be satisfied by his knowledge. Shall my righteous servant justify many, for he shall bear their wickedness, their immorality, their lawlessness, right? Therefore will I divide him a portion with the great, and he shall divide the spoil with the strong, because he hath poured out his soul unto death, and he was numbered with the transgressors, and he bore the wickedness, the lawlessness of many, and made intercession for their transgressions. And seriously, again, this is what I'm talking about, is that the separation of human doctrine, the separation of, or a lack of knowledge of, what the churches have been presenting to the world for hundreds and hundreds of years, right? It has to change. There is churches that are presenting newer teachings, right? Controversial at times. So it's starting up. But one of the things that we really have to start praying and meditating on is that the ones who go to church that are the Bible thumpers, right? The Bible thumpers are going to, they can go crazy, they can go mad, and they can become the lawless ones because of a lack of knowledge. They can become angry, they can become bitter because of a lack of wanting to adapt with change, right? Change is everything. Change in a business. If you're not changing your business and you're just staying by the old ways, your business will fail. You have to change with the times. You got to change with how your customers, what they're looking for. You have to bring out new products, new ideas, new ways of presenting merchandise, right? You have to be able to create newness. You have to create, it's just change. You got to learn about change. When you go through life, you have to learn about change. You're a child, and you have to learn on how to mature. You have to learn on how to listen to adults, right? You become a teenager, rebellious teenager, and that's what we all went through. We think that we know it all. We think that we're better. Hey, I can do things on my own. And then once you become an adult, you're like, oh, okay, well, you know, being an adult's a little harder than I thought. And then you progress from there. You know, sometimes some people are like, you know, I'm going to be rebellious still, and they'll go through their teenage, you know, their 20s, and be drinking and not have a job or lose a job because of their ego, right? Their ego, and there's that lack of maturity again. So you have to begin to build that level of maturity as well. I kind of lost track where I was going with this, but maturity is key in everything, and that's maturity within the spirit. Um, and that's exactly what Christ was trying to present out there at the end of the day. Is that we have to let the churches fight amongst themselves. You know, they are going to be the ones that are going to be fighting. You know, the churches should not be fighting over each other or trying to create these different types of titles when at the end of the day their message is the same, right? You know, their message is the same, is to go to Christ, is to be anointed with the Spirit of Christ, right? You know, we are saved by the blood of Christ, right? By the blood of Christ. And that's what I'm going to go ahead and talk about now, is the blood of Christ, right? This is a huge thing. The blood of Christ, and what is it? It is DNA, it is genetics. And the interesting thing about genetics itself is that when we are born into the family we're born into, hey, how's it going, Colton? The bloodline that we're born into, we end up downloading all of the ancestral history of our bloodline. And this is where meditation comes into play, because we are actually able to travel back in time. And this is why people get confused, because they're like, oh, I had a past life of this, I had a past life of that. But it's really is that you're living out your ancestral bloodline. You're seeing your ancestors continuously. This is why people, you know, say that you're reincarnated and things of that nature. You know, there's a lot of different ways you can look at it. I definitely have some theories about reincarnation, but I think as a whole, it's just a lack of knowledge of what our bodies and our genetics are really capable of. You know, scientists haven't even peaked the iceberg of what this vessel can do. It's truly uncanny, you know. And again, Christ taught us a lot about this. At least he taught his disciples, but those teachings were either hidden or burned, or something of that nature, right? You know, Christ's practices were never really discussed. They were always behind closed doors. So that's something we got to think about as well. But anyways, so yeah, so that's what we're looking at, is that genetics are linked, so we can travel back in time and experience all this stuff. So yeah, you could go back in time and experience Christ. You know, you could go back in time further and see different things. So when people are testifying that, hey, they went to this timeline or that timeline, it could very well be true. And we have to really listen to these elements of these testimonies, because there's a hint of truth within it all. And it's very important. And that's why I'm saying that, is that that's what it means, the blood of Christ, right? You know, we are saved by the blood of Christ because it is within our genetics. We have downloaded that state of consciousness, has been spread out through the ethers. It has created an echo within the ethers, and his story has continued to remain to this very day. You know, the Vatican could have chosen to take out Christ's story, right? If they would have took out Christ's story, humanity would have been more into enslavement. Humanity would have been more into the unawareness of the spirit, of learning how to communicate with the Almighty. You know, but they chose to leave it in there. And maybe by the universal laws, maybe they can't take it out. Maybe that is just how powerful that Christ energy is that it created a huge portal that would never be broken, that it would remain in the constant stream. It gets huge, it really does. But that's what we have to look at. And since our ancestors have that knowledge, it's built within their DNA. So as they're having kids, Christ is still within the genetics of us. And it truly is uncanny. And that's why I say the power of prayer and meditation is huge. You got to be able to communicate with the Almighty. You got to be able to go within and learn about meditation. Talk with the beings that surround you, the perceived angels, whatever it is. Your shadow selves will show up as well. Hence why a lot of people see demons. They can really be the shadow self. And it gets really deep. This is why its maturity within the spirit is key. Because we're not taught any of this stuff, right? Unless you go and be a Buddha, right? You go and learn how to be a Buddha. Then they're going to teach you about how to learn about conquering the shadow self and learn about all the other spiritual elements of stuff, right? They teach you that stuff and it's great, but they lack the foundation of the anointing of the Spirit as well. So, man, it's a mess. It really is. But, that's where we just have to put all of the pieces of the puzzle together and bring it back as a whole so we can truly understand what Christ was here for and what he created for us. Again, Christ was never meant to be on a pedestal. Christ wanted us to walk beside him, not behind him, not in front of him, but beside him, and spread his good news about discovering the Spirit within and talking with the Most High within is huge. It's huge. So yeah, I could keep going on and on and on forever, but I got to keep these videos short. So yeah, so at the end of the day, we have to start looking at a new way of this stuff. Let's see. Colton says here, what are your thoughts on the Visa Pisces? I don't even know what that is, man. I'll have to look that up myself. And it being the symbol of our DNA being mixed with reptilian, which would explain our limbic system and the reptilian part of our brain that feeds let's see here, and the reptilian part of our brain that feeds our flesh. Everything is symbolic. Everything is symbolic, and I've talked about the serpent before. The serpent can be a representation of our genes or our genetics. It's and that could be the symbol. That symbol could be just the hospital symbol. I think that's what it is. The hospital symbol that shows the two snakes and then the coil in the middle, which would be the spinal cord, right? The spinal cord, the staff, Moses' staff. It gets huge, right? The Kundalini, whatever it may be. The reptilian side, if you do research on it, right, you got a left brain and you got a right brain. One half of the brain is instinct. There's humans that live by instinct. Those are the irrational ones, the ones who don't think, they just continuously act. And then there's the other side of the brain that's the more logical element. We sit down and think before we act, like myself. So there's two different elements there. People get it confused of like, oh, it's the Draconians or it's the Anunnaki or the lizard people, right? That's a whole other different element. And I really feel that stuff is irrelevant because it distracts us and keeps us away from our spiritual connection. I am aware that there is different beings on this planet. I think someday we will see the different styles. We got to realize that humanity has messed with genetics for tens of thousands and thousands of years, man. So you're gonna see mutants. You're gonna see. It reminds me of the Ninja Turtles. You know, there could very well, really, literally be Ninja Turtles, for real. There really could be, and there could be a Master Splinter, for real. There really could be. So we really have to keep an open mind in those elements as well. But I think we really need to just stay focused on these spiritual connections. Let's see. Colton says it's a secret geometry symbol that looks like a Venn diagram. I'll have to look at it, man. I see all these symbols, but sometimes I don't really know the names behind them. Let's see. Colton says he's about ready to get off break. All right. Take it easy, brother. Watch it, man. Oops. I lose my phone. So yeah, so I mean that was a good conversation right there. You know, Colton brought up some other things that we have to look into as well. You know, all these patterns that we see, right? The flower of life and things of that nature. They're very two-dimensional, right? You know, people draw them out. But the interesting thing is, I was watching a guy on Facebook, and he said, you know, what about if these symbols, right, the flower of life and these other kind of symbols that people create, what about if we turn them into a full 3D atmosphere and we allow them to move, much like a clock or something like that? Allow them to move. What will happen if they actually become a sphere, right? You know, a lot of people say that these hidden symbolisms are actually gateways or stargates of some kind, unlocking of the keys, right? When my guides were teaching me about energy work, right? My guides taught me about energy work, how to allow your energy to merge with the ethers. They were teaching me about all these secret symbols and way and how to put these sigils within the ethers, right? You know, sigils of protection, sigils of working with the elementals and changing your DNA, changing your own DNA, and things of that nature, right? They were teaching me about all these sigils. And you know, when you look through your imagination or your magi eye, your third eye, your God eye, right? You really begin to see those kind of patterns unfold before your eyes, and you have to somehow bring that stuff into this reality, right? Into this reality, and this is where, you know, we're seeing scientists, you know, do this kind of stuff, and they hint of what they're doing, right? You know, CERN is a good example about, you know, they're opening black holes and things like that, you know, stuff they shouldn't be touching. But they let us know. I'm sure they're a lot more advanced than what they're claiming to be. They just let us know what they're doing, you know, that it is a possibility that we can manipulate the very structure of this matrix, and we can do that. You know, we can bring these sigils in from the imagination world, right, the magi world, and bring it into this physical reality. You know, eventually this will be the land of magi's again. This will be the land of what it was kind of like in Lemuria, in Antarctica. You know, the last ages of the magi's, right? And it was very powerful before that. So, you know, we just have to put all the pieces of the puzzle together. And again, I'm going to be talking forever here. So, at the end of the day, the main message that I want to get across here is that Christ set the awareness of spirituality for humanity, period. For humanity, period. And it's up to us to continue his legacy, right, through the generations and generations and generations to come. Our children are the ones that we have to prepare for. You know, we are going to be guiding our children, and it's 50-50. It's 50-50. I can honestly say it's 50-50. If we guide our children and bring back spiritual teachings, and it becomes huge and blossoms, man, life will be good for generations to come, right? Right? 1,000-year reign, right? If it was what people say. But if we just maintain spirituality here, and the physical realm continues to grow, right? The physical presentation of things, just allowing that physical lawlessness to continue to grow, then spirituality is going to remain down here. So we have to raise the bar up for spiritual awareness, learning how to communicate with the Almighty, and be able to reach our true potentials of what we're here for. We all hear the calling, and I hear this a lot. We all hear the calling, but very few will actually pick up that calling. Will actually pick up the phone and say, hey, oh yeah, I'm ready. I'm ready, Christ. Let's do this. Let's do this. Very few are ready to go out into that journey. And this is a very new journey, very exciting journey. For a lot of people, it's a very scary journey because, again, we're living in a state of confusion. We're watching the old paradigms fall, our old traditions fall. So we're bringing new things up about spirituality. And again, you're going to be coming into all of these layers of, well, what about magic? What about dark magic? You know, what about paganism? What is all this stuff? You know, spirituality deals with the ethers, right? And this is why people are going to get so confused, so very confused and scared. That's why maturity is key, and we have to steer away from human doctrines. That's huge. You know, are you going to be able to, and I think that's how I'm going to end this, can you have a personal relationship with Christ and God and learn about spiritual teachings and practices within yourself without books? Without books. Can you do it? Do you have the courage to do that? Are you ready to face your shadow selves? Are you ready to heal yourself, to fix yourself with the guidance of Christ by your side? Are you ready for it? And once the books, the spiritual book of life is open within you, are you ready to read that book? You know, are you ready to learn about your soul heritage? Are you ready for it, right? It can be a scary thing, right? Because it's something new, it's something different. I had to learn all this stuff by myself. I had to open that book of life within, right? That's where I get a lot of this stuff, is from experiences in that spiritual realm, jumping into the ethers, learning with my guides about these spiritual stuff. Which, how did I do that? Through the imagination, the Magi eye, that perceived God eye, right? The eye of Ra, right? The famous Illuminati signal. But at the end of the day, you do research on the eye. It's been around forever. It's not a symbolism of the perceived Illuminati. It's the hidden symbolism of the imagination, the Magi eye, learning how to talk with the Most High at the end of the day. It all comes from meditation, which comes from here. You know, you look into the pineal gland and things of that nature, right? But it's in there. It's in there. The power of the Magi eye. Again, a lack of knowledge. Oh no! Oh, there we go. I think the internet's telling me it's time to go. So yeah, so anyways, at the end of the day, it's all about going back within, learning about Christ's teachings. Again, if you read anything in the Bible, just read the life and death of Christ, and you're going to learn a lot about what it means to live within the Spirit and what it means to walk in this physical reality among the lawless ones. We are surrounded by lawless ones. We really are. And we have to just let the lawless ones be. And those who are wanting to go into the Spirit will be guided to you. will be drawn to you, and the Spirit will begin to flow out. The good news will flow out to help them. So definitely huge. Again, I could talk forever. So that's the message, is that we have to go back into the Spirit, learn about spirituality, learn that Christ came back to help future generations continue the legacy of what Christ laid down, is to communicate back with the Almighty, learn how to communicate with the ethers, and stay connected with Christ, being anointed with the Spirit. So yeah, so anyways, so love yourself, keep shining bright. If you have any questions, let me know. And again, I'll be doing more live videos a lot more consistently, so definitely look forward to that. I am going to be working on schedule as well, so you can kind of get used to when I'll be on. So yeah, so I'm still working on that, but yeah, I'll be more consistent on these live videos. So yeah, so love yourself, keep shining bright, and I'll talk to y'all later.